Episode 2: The Birth of a Nation in Chains. The Roots of Galut Mitzrayim, the Exile of Egypt. Exile doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't begin when chains are put on. Exile starts when you stop noticing the chains at all. It begins when slavery becomes normal. Before the Jews were physically enslaved in Egypt, they were already trapped in something deeper. And before redemption can come, exile has to reach its full depth. This is true for nations, and this is true for you. Let's begin. In the last episode, we redefined exile. We saw that exile isn't just about land. It's about consciousness. We learned that the first exile started with Adam and Chava, when reality itself became distorted. And we ended with the question: where in my life am I still in exile? Today, we're going to take that deeper. How does exile actually begin? How do nations fall into Galut? And most importantly, how does this apply to you right now? Because the patterns of history repeat, and what happened in Mitzrayim is happening again right now. The slow descent into slavery. Most people think the Jewish exile in Egypt began with Pharaoh enslaving the Jews. But it didn't. The process of exile started long before Pharaoh ever issued a decree. The Torah tells us how it happened. Yosef is sold into slavery. Genesis 37. His family slowly follows him to Egypt for survival. Genesis 46. They settle there comfortably. They have land, stability, protection. Exodus chapter 1. Then a new king arose who did not know Yosef. Exodus chapter 1. And suddenly they are enslaved. What happened? They didn't go to Egypt as slaves. They went there by choice. And for years, everything seemed fine. Until one day, everything changed. But here's the truth. It didn't happen in one day. Exile is a slow process. And before you know it, you're trapped. Mitzrayim as Metzarim, the narrowing of consciousness. The Hebrew word Mitzrayim comes from Metzarim, narrow, constricted places. Exile isn't just about being physically trapped. It's about being mentally and spiritually constricted. The Arizal says, the real exile of Egypt was an exile of da'at, consciousness, awareness, clarity. The Jews did not wake up one day as slaves. First, they forgot their identity. Then, they stopped seeing exile as a problem. And finally, they couldn't imagine freedom anymore. This is how every exile begins. Not just in history, but in your life too. How exile starts in your life. Ask yourself, where have I become comfortable in exile? Where have I settled for less, even though I know I was meant for more? Where am I enslaved, but I don't even recognize it? But here's the truth. Pharaoh never starts by taking away your freedom. He starts by making you give it away voluntarily. How does that happen? Small compromises. Just this once. It's not a big deal. getting too comfortable. This is fine. No need to change. Forgetting the mission. Who even says Torah matters that much? Slavery becomes normal. This is just how life is. It is what it is. And before you know it, you don't even fight back anymore. That's when Pharaoh wins. The exile today. The Jewish people today are still in exile, and the pattern is the same as Egypt. We entered by choice, seeking comfort in other nations, other values, other ideologies. We lost clarity of purpose, who we are, why we exist. Now we face rising pressure, anti-Semitism, and global instability, just like in Egypt. The world today is enslaved, but doesn't see it. People believe they are free, but they are trapped in constant distractions. People think they are making choices, but they are programmed to live a certain way. People laugh at Geulah, redemption, because they've been conditioned to think exile is normal. This is the final Egypt. The only question is, will you recognize it, or will you accept the chains? Exile doesn't start with chains. It starts with small compromises. Look at your own life. Where have I settled for exile thinking? Where have I stopped questioning the system? Where am I waiting for someone else to free me instead of making a move? Recognizing the exile is the beginning of your redemption. Because the way you leave exile is by realizing you don't belong there. This was episode 2. In the next episode, we're going deeper. Why did Pharaoh's slavery work? What was his real strategy? And how is it being used against us today? If you've made it this far, don't stop here. If this message shook something in you, share it. Because the more people who wake up, the faster we bring the redemption. See you in episode 3.